A unique perspective into the art of tag team wrestling, direct from one of the masters of the craft? That's today as part of Something New. I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. Here on my channel, I make videos for fellow professional wrestlers at every single stage of their career. And I do this because when I was starting out, when I was just a wee rookie in the business of wrestling, I had no coach to teach me, nor did I have a mentor to guide me. And I think the absence of that veteran wisdom, knowledge, and experience ultimately played a role in my failure to achieve my career goal. And I don't want that to happen to you. Today marks the start of a brand new series here on the channels that I'm calling Icons and Insights, in which I want to share with you wisdom gleaned and lessons learned from time I got to spend with true superstars of the squared circle, both past and present. I've been really fortunate over the years to sit under the learning tree of some longtime veterans of wrestling whose bodies of work utterly eclipse my own. And as I went back through my own mental archive about all these lessons learned, experiences that I've had, it made me realize there's a lot in there I want to share with you. And thus, this new series, Icons and Insights. And I want to start this week with the enforcer of the Four Horsemen, Arn Anderson. When people make lists of the most underrated wrestlers of all time, those lists invariably feature Arn Anderson. For my money, he's one of the slickest tag team wrestlers that has ever lived. I think of tag team wrestling as a completely separate language from singles wrestling, having one-on-one matches. And yet, there are a lot of people out there who basically take the approach that a tag team match is just two singles matches that happen to have gone to the ring at the exact same time. There are a few modern tag team matches out there which capture the kinetic energy and the magic of some really classic tag team matches, like the ones that make up my very favorite series of tag team bouts ever held. Those are the ones that pit Arn Anderson and his partner Tully Blanchard against the Rockers, the duo of Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. Now, I don't mind telling you, I was a little bit late to the Arn and Tully party. During the time they're in the World Wrestling Federation together, Arn and Tully are collectively referred to as the Brainbusters, and their tenure there is really only about a year long. It's from late 1988 through late 1989. And because that is from just before I started watching, well, there was a slight barrier to entry. I wasn't sure I wanted to go back and seek out these matches that the Brainbusters had before their very brief run in the WWF wrapped up. However, in the early days of my Wrestle Factory, one of my most outspoken trainees, who knew I was an admirer of Arn Anderson's work, would always end up hounding me. He'd say, "Yo, Quack, you gotta watch some Arn stuff with Tully, you're gonna love it." And I was a bit resistant at first. But once I caved in and watched these matches, I realized Eddie was right. If you happen to be unfamiliar with the work of Arn Anderson, you're probably going to find tag team matches of his where he's paired with Ric Flair or with Larry Zbyszko. But I happen to think his very finest tandem is the one he forms with Tully Blanchard, especially when they're together as the Brainbusters. There's a period of time when I began to obsessively study the Brainbusters matches, trying to dial into all the little details and nuances to see what I could glean about what makes these matches so fascinating. And there happened to be a period of time where I was doing a bit of coaching and consulting for the WWE while Arn Anderson was there as a producer. And so I decided to play 6 Degrees of Arn Anderson. Would he be open to having a conversation about tag team wrestling? Is that the kind of thing he enjoys talking about? And everybody that I reached out to said, "Oh yeah, you should go ahead and reach out to him." And so I contacted the enforcer. So I shot Arn Anderson an email. That is my preferred method of communication. And I expressed to him very sincerely how much I admire and respect his body of work. And then I asked him for his insight. I asked if there was a guiding principle or a golden rule that helped shape those tag team matches that he is most famous for. and I sent it off and then waited anxiously, refreshing my inbox constantly to see if I got a reply from the enforcer himself. Now, before I tell you this next part of the story, I want you to know this about me. I am not the most tech-savvy guy you will ever come across. Anytime I have to recalibrate these two Elgato key lights I use when filming Till We Make It by making sure they are paired together and synced to the proper Wi-Fi network, I feel like I need to take half a day off from work, and then as soon as I'm done, I need a nap. So I'm not poking fun. But a little while later, I did get an email response from Arn Anderson. And when I opened that email, the body of the email was blank. But in the subject line, it read, "Dear Mike, thanks so much for your email. I appreciate what you had to say. And yes, I do have an insight to share with you about my guiding principle for tag team wrestling. I believe the real secret of a great tag team match is..." And that's where it ended. That was all the more information that was in the subject line. Because, presumably, he erroneously typed his response into the subject line, not into the body of the email. And it could not have been a more dramatic cliffhanger to read. So as you can imagine, I would like to know the secret of tag team wrestling. Apparently he took the time to type it out to me. Maybe it's in there somewhere, so I copied and pasted it into a blank text document. No, it was exactly the way that I read it in the subject line. Then I did what any sane person would do. I called Google. Tell me, Gmail experts, where the rest of this information is. Well, apparently, 150 characters is all the more that subject line can contain, and although he may have kept typing thereafter, that information is not captured in the email that I have received. And after exhausting all of my not-so-tech-savvy potential solutions, I came to the sad realization that perhaps the secret of tag team wrestling from one of the greatest tag team wrestlers who's ever laced up boots might remain forever unknown to me. So, I just came to accept this as my fate. I was never going to know the secret of tag team wrestling according to Arn Anderson because I felt like it would be too much of an imposition to write him back, explain what happened with the email, get him to retype out whatever he had sent me before, and blah, blah, blah. So, I thought, I had my one bite at the apple, this is what I came up with. Live with it, Mike. However, a few months later, I happened to be across a cafe table from another one of my trainees, who I love to name drop, Cesaro. Because whenever a house show loop brings him through the area, we grab coffee together. And he brought it up to me. He said, "Hey, did you ever hear back from Arn about tag team wrestling?" And I said, "Yes, you're not going to believe it." And so I told him the story the same way I just told it to you. And of course we had a laugh about that. And he said, "Well, you know I'm going to see him. Why don't I just ask him about that? And I'll see what the answer is meant to be, and then I'll get back to you." And of course, I was very excited to know this because having that kind of knowledge direct from someone who is so masterful at tag team wrestling, that's invaluable. It's priceless knowledge. Well, luckily for you and I, El Suisso's always good to his word. And a little while later, he did see Arn Anderson, and he came through with the goods. According to the enforcer himself, the secret to great tag team wrestling is to approach the match as if it is a gimmick match. And here's what that means to me. It means that the tempo and the deployment of the tags has to be central to the structure, and it has to supersede any particular spot someone's trying to jam in or any single move someone is trying to feature. The tags must be treated as the centerpiece, never as an afterthought. And if you've seen those kinds of tag team matches like I described a minute ago, where it really seems like two singles matches that went to the ring at the same time, that's exactly what's going on. The tags are being treated as an afterthought. Or, for greater context, just picture any other gimmick match, like a ladder match. Can you imagine a ladder match in which the ladders are not the centerpiece, but rather treated like an afterthought? Well, why is it even a ladder match in that case? And that's how I feel about tag team wrestling in light of this insight from Arn Anderson. If that's not going to be central to the flow of the match, the deployment and the tempo of the tags, why have a tag match at all? That simple thought has brought such clarity to the way I assemble or write for tag team wrestling. And I feel really grateful that Arn Anderson chose to share some of his wisdom was someone he doesn't really even know. It would have been so easy for him to just dismiss that, let alone explain it once and then explain it to somebody else again to make sure that the message was received. And it's such valuable insight that I wanted to share it with you. Now, I do appreciate not everybody learns best orally. Some people need a visual aid. And if that sounds like you, well, it's your lucky day, because the WWE has uploaded one of the Brainbusters tag team matches against the Rockers. So, before you click, leave me a like, subscribe if you haven't, and then let's travel back in time to 1989, to Madison Square Garden, and let's watch these four masters of tag team wrestling at work.